What is going on, guys? My name is Demetri, and welcome to the Rice Productive Podcast. In today's episode, we have a self-development YouTuber who is doing amazing things. We met on the interwebs, as I usually do with most of my guests. Welcome to the show, Shaun Holden. Hey, what's going on, Shaun?
Hello, Demetri. Thanks for having me. This is a pleasure. I've been following you for quite a bit now, so this is my first podcast, so be gentle.
Oh, I will be very gentle. I have to be, because I feel like it's the least I can do, because I or Shaun have like canceled on each other nonstop for the past God, I don't even know how long. It was okay. So we tried starting this, I think. So we're recording this on the 5th of September, by the way. So I believe you probably first reached out to me on Instagram, right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
And
I think I reached out for a collaboration.
Yeah, and I was like, you know what? Let me check out your stuff. Oh, I like your stuff. Podcast. And then that was probably early August, and then or maybe even late July. And it was just
July.
Yeah, late July. And then we're like, okay, let's get together for a phone call. The first phone call that was set up, I overslept, because I was like, all right, yeah, I'll do it at 5:15. And then I woke up at 5:30, as some days I do. And I went, oh, man. He's in the middle of his day, so I couldn't. It's not like for me, I'm up at 5:15, 5:45. The difference doesn't matter. But and then this, that, the other. I think one time your internet was getting affected by the weather. Just so many different things.
Oh.
It was, we set up a call and got the call portion done. Which, for those of you that don't know, with my podcast, I call the person and talk about the topics, get to know them, and we've been done with that for 3 weeks at this point. And then Shaun and I have been trying to get the actual podcast together for almost a month, and then finally, I had my move and everything, and everyone's just done being annoying with their side of things. The world is being annoying.
The world.
All right, man. So let's get this show started off by saying a little bit about yourself. I'm sure everyone wants to know about you, your channel, and everything else.
Okay, so yeah, Shaun Holden. Thank you for that intro, by the way. So started YouTube around May. It was pandemic hit. I had plenty of time on my hands, and I noticed everyone was being quite negative around social media about how bad it was. And yeah, of course, absolutely, it's it was terrible, the things that have happened. But I thought, well, why not try and use my time wisely to try and create videos to help others. So I actually I've done a really, really bad video on Instagram and Facebook. Terrible. I don't think you've actually seen it because it's on a private one.
Nice.
It's awful. It's just a lot. I think it's 9 minutes of me just rambling on of okay, zero editing. So quite real. And I had a few people reach out to me and just say, we should do more videos. So I thought, well, if enough people say it, then I'll give it a go, and tried to sort of reach out to a larger audience. Decided YouTube would be the place for that, and started creating videos about the 11th of May, and positivity, productivity. The concept of the channel is to help others help themselves, and I think for me, the response has been brilliant. I always wanted and hoped that I'd just be able to help a few people. But now some of the comments and messages I'm receiving have been, they've kept me motivated to keep going, really.
That's really nice. I think, the way we all start our journey is pretty entertaining. I think you saying it was very awkward in your first video. You had a million ums, a million ahs. That takes so much time. I think people who start YouTube have these insanely high expectations of themselves. For example, I just said, I'm fairly well trained at this point. But when I'm thinking, the comes out because I'm like Obama. For those of you that don't know, I'm actually impressions guy, but that's a whole nother topic. That I love doing Obama impressions in there. So when you start off like that, and you have that nice little feedback, though, it is a good feeling. I think when I started in high school, just randomly doing this, the feeling of just people being supportive towards a piece of content you create, you're like, that's pretty good. It's a feel good feeling, and especially when you're doing something in the niche that we are both nested into, I think helps as well, because you're trying to make people's lives better. And then on top of that, then they're giving you some feedback, which is positive, which means like, okay, so I positively impacted someone. I think for different niches, it could be different. For example, like there's like a whole like prank niche. Like, okay, a bunch of people like thought it was funny. I don't know if that has the same gravity to it as if you're positively affecting somebody in like our niches. Do you feel that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we got some topics for this one. I was like looking at the topics. I think your life story is pretty interesting. So Shaun is from the UK. If you couldn't tell, I mean, I could be from the UK, but I could just not have an accent. Just kidding. I think that we talked a little bit about how you grew up, where you ended up early in your life, and I think that's definitely something that the peeps would want to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so for around, I would say the last 5 years, I would say I've done a lot of reflection on my life and the things and events that happened and occurred during my childhood. And that has severely sort of impacted me, not necessarily negatively, but of course it's impacted me nonetheless. So I grew up without a father. So without a father figure, really poor sort of area, constantly moving house to house, home to home. And there was never really any stability there. And for me, I had a lot of things going on at home that impacted me educationally. So I wasn't very sort of good in school. I had subjects I was, I excelled in, but majority I wasn't very great in. And this sort of impacted my decisions and choices after I finished school. So here we finished school at 16. I think that's changed now to 18, but we finished school at 16 and then we decide if we want to go to further education, whether that be university, work-based apprenticeships. And I left school. I had a very abusive father figure. And for me, I just didn't really know what to do. I didn't really, I guess, reflecting back, I was sort of lost. So for me, I'd done really awful in school and I was good at two things, cooking and acting. Excuse me. So it was either I decided to, try and pursue a career as an actor, which of course is a lot more difficult than learning how to cook. So I opted for the cooking and done that for 8 years. Actually found something I was good at. People give me some recognition. Obviously, I never really had that in school, oh, you're good at this or you're clever at that. I was never really academically clever. And now looking back, I think it's quite bizarre because now all I love doing is learning. The whole process of creating my YouTube content, my favorite part, believe it or not, is doing the research, putting the hours in and learning, whether that's reading, podcasts, anything and everything. So I've sort of done a whole U-turn. It's almost like I'm back in school, which has been great because I've enjoyed every moment. But looking back, it wasn't great. There's plenty of things I would like to keep, to myself. And there's plenty of things that I like to disclose on some of my videos, which I think is beneficial for anyone else who's in a similar situation. But looking back now, I wouldn't change anything because, it's made me the person I am today.
I think that's really impressive that you are able to open up so much about it. And in your content, I think it shows how much you care about wanting to help improve other people's lives, because that story is pretty, I mean, I don't want to say it's like uncommon, but I think it is. Granted, you could go so far as to being such a great chef that then you could become an actor. Have you heard of Gordon Ramsay? Jamie Oliver types. That'd be funny. But no, in all seriousness, like that's really hard to do. I think I've opened up with some of my issues on my channel, and I think that really helps you connect with your audience. And going back to your point about research and learning, I totally agree 100% with like looking into self-development stuff. When you first start out and you can kind of get hooked on it. I mean, that stuff's pretty powerful. When they find the right kind of stuff, you're like, wow, that's pretty interesting stuff. I think I didn't know that this was possible. I think learning about these different statistics about people who are struggling in different areas, et cetera, I think some of the most impactful ones for me would definitely be like all the productivity, time management hacks, some personal finance related things, a lot of like health and wellness related things. So you doing that and making a weekly video on different topics that could help improve people's lives definitely shows that full circle of like, you've improved yourself, you're doing pretty well for yourself right now. And even if people are growing up in a situation where, you know, like you said, you didn't have a great father figure, you out of 16, you're like, or after 16, you're like, yeah, I'm done with this household. You can definitely still pick yourself up and make the most of it. And you definitely have done that. And you've shown that you have a really great attitude, which I think is hard in that situation to have or to ever get to, because a lot of people like start there and then they don't think to themselves, I can get out of it.
Yeah, it can become a really sort of vicious circle. You know, you sort of think, oh, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. And in my opinion, as you mentioned, then I didn't actually mention I was homeless, but yeah, I was homeless at 16. We know because we spoke previously. So for the listeners, I moved out, had a really abusive physical encounter, which is on one of my videos. I ended up homeless at 16 and I lived in a homeless hostel. So there's been a lot of life lessons, but I think now, just going back to what I mentioned then, you either, in my experience, you either go one way, which is the same way as sort of your family, or you go the polar opposite. And I've just took the polar opposite path. You know, I wanted to create a path that, you know, and a life that, for me, I wouldn't have to worry about money. I wouldn't have to worry about, of course, you know, things happen, life gets in the way, but it was really crucial for me to ensure that when I do finally have children, that I don't have to give them the life that I've had, and I can give them the life that I wanted. So that's sort of been my motivation, to be honest with you. I always said growing up, you know, if I ever got someone pregnant, you know, whether that was girlfriends or, you know, hookups or whatever it was, if that happened, then I promised to myself that I would be a good father figure, because I knew what it was like growing up without a dad. And for me, I wouldn't wish that upon anybody.
Yeah, learning from those situations is definitely not always what's going to happen, but you doing that's impressive. You know, I think I'm trying to think of another example. Well, I have one, but I'm just trying to think of a way to formulate my thoughts here. So, for example, you know, you want to be a better father figure than the one you had. And I think that happens a lot with people who are like influenced by alcoholic family members when they grow up. You ever notice that? Like either they follow it, which is obviously not a good thing, and then it's like a family trait almost. And then there's a lot of people who just say, nope, never drinking, like not going to be a thing. So it's always interesting to see how that plays out. But you definitely took the right approach to it, and I think having that mindset is going to serve you very well for whoever has the lucky situation to be in your care, because you're probably just so negatively affected by it that you're going to do your best to like look into how to properly, you know, like support whoever, like whether you have a daughter or son, and you're going to look up and you want to learn, like you said, you're going to look up what are the different ways that I can make myself the best father figure that I can be, because life is something that you don't want to be hard for that person, at least at a young age, or at least life is hard enough. You don't want any more of it to come from you.
Absolutely, yeah.
Sense, yeah.
That makes perfect sense. I think, you know, that whenever the day comes, the thing is about parenthood is obviously, I mean, I'm not a parent now, but there's no right way to do it. You know, there's no book that says this is the way you need to parent, do this and you will succeed. So, you know, it's something, it's like life, you know, it's a journey of learning, and you're going to get things wrong and you're going to get things right. But I think the important message behind me and my story is that you shouldn't let your past define you, and you don't have to be, you know, the victim of your past, for me. And it's up to you what you do with it. But like you said, it is a mindset, and it's really difficult sometimes to get into that mindset. But yeah, hopefully, you know, fingers crossed when the day comes and there's little Shauns running around, then I can use the lessons that I've learned and, you know, be a good father figure. So fingers crossed to that.
Yeah. And actually, you know what? I forget. Are you, what are you, 27?
Oh, very close, 28.
You know what? You are the 7th person that's 28 on this podcast.
Oh, really?
I've had 19 episodes. This is ridiculous. Every time I ask the question, I feel like I'm 28. And I'm just like, well, did I just pick this age? Like, I don't know how this keeps happening, but like, I keep trying to guess a different number. I was gonna guess 28 because I'm like, he's probably 28. Like, it's ridiculous. I think Nemo's 28, Anna's 28, you're 28. Yeah, there's like so many people. It's just ridiculous every time. I think Vince is 26, but anyways, that's funny. Yeah, when you're, I'm not saying you're like there. I know 28's an age though where you're starting to get close to maybe settling down and that sort of thing. But you currently are working in the kitchen. You went to culinary school, right? And now you're working in recruitment. Or you worked in recruitment first, or which way order was that?
The first way. So
Okay.
I was trained as a chef. I've done that for 8 years, and I was actually coming into contact. I would say this was probably the time that I really had a mindset shift. I was coming into contact with a lot of really unhappy chefs. They were all just miserable, saying to me, get out of the kitchens, there's no money to be earned. And for me at the point, growing up without any money, I was thinking, I don't want to be working 60 hours a week, because, that's the reality of hospitality and the industry itself. You're working long hours for very little money. And yeah, of course you can make it. And what I mean when I say you make it, you can earn as much money as you want, opening your own restaurant and things. But for me, that just wasn't something I wanted to do. I got good at something, and then I sort of realized, I had a conversation with myself, and I was like, this isn't a life I want. I don't want to be getting to 40, 50, looking back and regretting not trying something else. So I'm a fairly confident guy. So I thought, well, I'll just try something else. So I went to, funny enough, I'm sort of reciting a video, but I literally went to Google, and obviously I didn't go to university. So I was thinking, right, what can I do that's going to earn me money? A lot of it, because I never had money before, and I don't have a degree. So I went to Google, and recruitment kept popping up, recruitment. So I was thinking, okay, there's a job here which says that I can earn as much money as I want, depending on how much work I put in, as opposed to the kitchen, whereby I would earn the same amount of money regardless of how much work I put in. So I applied for plenty of roles, no joy, kept applying and applying, got plenty of rejection emails. And they were all saying I needed some experience in sales. They were saying, get some experience in sales and, then reapply.
Yeah.
So I decided to get a really bad, I don't know if you guys have them in the States, telesales. Does that make sense to you?
Call centers. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically a telesales job, and I was selling investments of property and oil and you name it. I was selling it. I was speaking to guys who portfolios of 250, 500 million pound property portfolios, and I was just trying to sell them. And of course my accent, that over here in England, I'm not actually from Liverpool, but I sound very similar. I'm from a place near Liverpool. So you're calling people who are quite well off, quite wealthy, and they just hear what you call a Scouser. So anyone from Liverpool is called a Scouser, and they'll just hear a Scouser trying to sell them investments. So they were just not really interested. I was, to be honest with you, I actually, because of my sort of mindset, a lot of the characteristics in the kitchen were transferable in sales, because you have to work under pressure, you have targets to hit, and you have to put in the work to get the results. So a lot of them were transferable. Anyway, cutting long story short, I didn't get paid my commission, so I thought, right, I'm gonna head out, try and get somewhere else. And then I landed in recruitment, and that is where I realized that I shouldn't have been chasing money, because I was earning a lot of it, and I was just thinking, I'm really not happy here. So I guess for me, the lesson learned there was that don't chase money, chase happiness. Yes, money can, bring you happiness in sort of short times and short periods, but ultimately what I valued more was my time rather than the money, because I never had any time to spend the money.
Yeah, I think that's really true when it comes to the time value concept, as well as the just like hating your job and doing it for the money. There may be a small period in people's lives where they have to take a job because, like they have bills to pay, that sort of thing. But it's definitely something that they should always be striving towards let's find some sort of side hustle that I can do on the side that I enjoy. Let's find some sort of way to make myself get closer to a dream job, because obviously you're working in a job that was for the money, and I'm sure you at some point were like, man, I got to figure out another way to get some income so I'm not as, I don't want to say upset with my life, but like, when you don't like your work,
Yeah, no,
it's hard to like what's going on in your life. That's something you're doing for 8 hours a day at least. And that's really rough. I definitely think I could do sales. I definitely think I could do those sort of things. I'm just aware of the fact that I would just not like it. Or, I could see myself somehow liking those sort of things, but I think inherently those jobs involve pressuring people into doing things that they're not initially interested in. And I'm not saying it's immoral, but I'm not saying it's not immoral. Like, you're pressuring someone into making a decision that they wouldn't have made without you like forcing it down their throat is my point. And it's just like, man, I don't know. I don't know if my personality fits that. Like, I could do it for the money, like you said, and how you're doing some of the stuff. I mean, recruitment's a little different than sales, but there are some there's definitely some pretty big overlapping characteristics, and I can understand why they want to do in sales before. I have a buddy here who's in recruitment, and he just talks about long hours, the constant like trying to get people to move from different companies. I don't know what kind of recruitment you're in, because there's different kinds of recruitment. There's like, are you recruiting for a specific company to try to get people to go to one company, or are you in a recruiting center where they're trying to fulfill needs of businesses who ask for your company's expertise?
So I was working within recruitment, I'll give you a very brief but short lesson. You have temporary recruitment and permanent recruitment. So you could be recruiting for temporary people, whether that's temporary warehouse operatives or temporary chefs or whatever your sort of niche is. Pretty similar to YouTube, you have your own niche and that's sort of what you produce. And the permanent side is you get them permanent roles. So I have done both temporary and perm. So I've done temporary within the nursing and healthcare sector, and I was very successful there. Really proud of my time with this company. I think they are, I won't name them, but I think they're the second largest recruitment company in the world. So really, to do well in such a global company like that, certainly a lot of things learned recruitment wise. And now I am doing the permanent side. Permanent side is a lot slower pace. So I work for a great company now, who are a lot smaller, but there's the right balance for me now in terms of the money I can earn, let's say, and the hours. It's not a case of they expect 70 hours from you, and if you turn around and say, "Oh, I've made you $5,000 this week," they say, "We want 7." Whereas my other company will like that. So here now, you get the recognition for when you're doing well, and you get left to your own devices. I work from home now, which is something that the other company wouldn't have been able to give me. And this was before COVID-19.
There's going to be a lot of flexibility. I feel like, I know I said it happened before the situation. Dang, that's a slam in my house. Sorry. So I think job flexibility is going to be really important moving forward. And I think a lot of companies understand with the situation going on that there's going to be a need for that flexibility. And it goes even further from that. I think in previous times, the fact that you just acknowledge that your company giving you more flexibility made it a more attractive job is going to really maybe open up companies' eyes, since now they have this situation where they're like, okay, all these people are seeing all this flexibility that certain companies are giving. If we're not giving it to them, it's kind of seen as a disadvantage now. You know how like for a while, most companies, well, actually you probably don't because you have national healthcare, but in the US there's like a bunch of companies who, it's like it's pretty normal for like a company to like put money into a 401k matching. There's like insurance that comes along with a lot of jobs because the big companies can pay for the insurance, and like individual insurance plans are expensive. And not having that as a company is seen as like you don't have insurance? I don't know if I can work for you because I'm not paying for my own insurance. Now, the flexibility could be almost in the same category, because if 80% of companies are going to let you work from home. Why would you not work for a company that has the option to work from home sometimes? Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I think for me, now now is the time to be, as companies, you got to be more open-minded. And certainly a lot of, I now recruit for hospitality professionals, so general managers, hotel managers, chefs,
It's
you
kind of
name it,
ironic.
anything that works. Yeah, but I guess the thing is, it's sort of, my clients really trust me and believe in me because they all know that I've done the job before. I know how difficult it is. And now, because of the situation, I've actually been getting back into the kitchen, because you guys don't have fellow over there, do you? Or do you?
Sorry, you cut out for a second. Good old Zoom, good old internet. What did you just say? You said something about
So,
you don't have what in the.
oh, sorry. Yeah, you don't have furlough in the US, do you?
Well,
Or
like
am I
we've
wrong?
had furlough recently with everything going on. Like there was a situation where companies were purposely, firing people and furloughing them so that they would get like the unemployment benefits that were going on.
Right. Okay. So yeah. So because I've been made furlough, which is, I think, is going to be at least going up until the end of September, beginning of October, I decided to get back into the kitchen, because we're allowed to work for other companies whilst we're furloughed. And we had a scheme over here in the UK, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with, but maybe your listeners are. There was an Eat Out to Help Out. So what that meant was that Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of the week, it was 50% on food. All these places were using this to incentivize the public to go and eat out, to help out the hospitality industry, because it really is on its backside. And it was so busy. So, revenue wise, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday just went straight up. So I was drafted in by an old general manager to help out in the kitchen. And it's been good, but damn, it's been tiring.
Yeah, man, I couldn't do the work. I couldn't work the food service industry. I honestly give you a lot of credit. I never had to. I'll be honest. I always ended up getting some like sort of summer office job or something. So I got lucky. Not everyone can do that, but not everyone can do office work. But not everyone can do the food service industry. I think that is a really good initiative that they had. By the way, my family personally was attempting to make that our mission. Like, let's go out to eat, or have carry out or contactless delivery, all the sort of like options that companies were doing 3-4 times a week when everything started, because we're like, man, these companies are going to struggle if they're not getting help all the time. So that was government, like, obviously not enforced, but it was something that they like tried to advertise, try to say, hey, let's help out our businesses. Like, was that like a national thing?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if it was national. Certainly in England, it was well, it was all over the media. Eat out to help out, and yeah, it wasn't compulsory, of course, but everyone loves a bargain, and you give anyone 50% off something, the demand is going to increase dramatically. So let's say, for example, steaks, let's say a ribeye steak was £20, and normally we'd pay that because that's
Yeah, it's
generally how
good.
much a steak goes for. So we were paying it for £10. And it was everything. It was food related, non drinks. But yeah, it was really busy in some venues. I actually enjoyed getting stuck in and helping out. But yeah, man, I'm 28 now. I'm not 18. I cannot be doing 12, 13 hours on my feet. I was absolutely killed.
Yeah, dude, that's rough. I will say though, the 50% off, like, as much as it might sound like that's, or to some people at least, it might sound like, oh well, they're gonna be losing money. Hey, you know what else makes you lose a lot of money? Not having your stock of food last, and then you have to throw it out for nothing. That also,
Yeah,
that'll do it to you. They'll do it to you a little
absolutely.
worse than that. Yeah, getting something rather than nothing definitely helped them out. So I think going more into the work, because we both are like working on YouTube, the work that we're doing on YouTube,
Yeah.
I have been creating for, God, wait a second, I gotta count. Counting's hard. Oh, it's only been like 5.5 5 months. That's not crazy. For some reason I thought it was longer, but I've only been
Feels
doing it
longer.
It feels longer. Yeah.
Feels
Yeah,
longer.
when you make
Is
a lot
this
of
for your
content, it
thing?
feels longer. When you make a lot of content, it feels longer. This whole 3 video a week thing is a grind, but at the point of this podcast being up, I will be down to the podcast, 1 video, and a bunch of me studying on the internet, which is going to be funny if anyone in my personal life wants to meme that later on. But yeah, no, I can't wait for that. That's going to be entertaining. I want to talk to you about how you got started. We talked about how on Facebook that happened. But I'm curious, you know, what do you think is something that you've done that's helped you grow so quickly? I think a lot of the people that watch my channel are very intrigued with that concept. There's a lot of small YouTubers who watch my channel, and I think you hit a K subs. I want to say in like 2 months, maybe month and a half. It was pretty quick.
53 days.
Wow, see that's nuts.
Yeah, yeah. I guess for me, yeah, it's, as milestones go, it's pretty quick. I was speaking to a lot of other people, and obviously, I'd not. I think we'd spoken before, but for anyone who doesn't know, I don't or haven't really spent so much time watching other YouTubers prior to the beer thing. So prior to being furloughed, I've not really watched any other YouTubers purposely, or with intent of, oh, this guy releases or this girl releases a video, and I would just sort of watch videos now and then. But for me, I would say the success behind growing that quick really relates to when I started in recruitment. I started a brand new business. So just to put it in sort of perspective, and I'm hoping to create a video on this eventually when I get round to it, but I really had to start from scratch when I started a business in recruitment. I had no nurses, I had no clients, no one knew we existed. So it's exactly the same in YouTube. I had no subscribers, no videos, no one knew I existed. So I sort of knew the work that was required in order for me to get up and off the ground and running, because I've done that in a business. And I think personally, for anyone who is listening or watching, you need to sort of manage your own expectations and realize that you're not going to sort of hit certain milestones immediately. For me, I would say I started my channel. I created it on the 4th of May, Star Wars Day, May the 4th. And I, for a week, for May the 4th to May the 11th, I literally just watched videos on everything: how to record, what equipment you'll need, how to make thumbnails, how to be confident in front of camera, you name it. I researched it for a whole week before I shot a video.
Sorry, I didn't know if you were gonna go. The the thing is, definitely when you're starting, that is just the route to go. Just looking up how to record, what to record with, etc. A lot of people ask me what my microphone is. I'm probably gonna eventually make a video on how to make a podcast, because you and I have spoken about how you're interested in starting a podcast, and at this point, you've made enough videos. You have a general idea above the average person in the population on how to record a video. You've obviously learned some things about quality, lighting, audio, all those sort of things. It's just a lot of practice. I have mentioned this multiple times on the podcast, but before making my videos on this channel, I vlogged and did like gaming content when I was younger, throughout high school, early college. I've made like 700 videos leading up to this channel just throughout my life. So the reason that my ability to just like kind of talk off the cuff in front of a camera and not be really nervous at all is because like it's just always been there. Like it's whatever, like, hi camera, like it's a thing. And that skill set was learned, and the skill set of figuring out audio had been learned probably previously. I'd gotten pretty good at audio because I grew up in a basement where my furnace decided to be louder than anything on the planet Earth. It's louder than the city of Chicago, which is hilarious to me. They're like, the microphone thinks it's louder, and I'm like, really, microphone? Like this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing. Like if the furnace turns on, like all hell breaks loose. But So I figured out that early on. I figured out a lot of like just software things, a lot of editing. So editing and being in front of the camera, like hammer that out. My younger self, I really appreciate you for putting in all that wasted work on failed YouTube channels. I learned how to engage with the audience, all that sort of things. And then, when you put more work into it, you can get more into the nitty gritty. Now I have B-roll. Never was a thing before, obviously. It was just like bad vlogs and me making bad jokes and saying expletives. And expletives, God. Sometimes I feel like when I'm talking on the channel, it's just like I'm like old or something. And furthering that point, I figured out lighting this time around, which is a big deal. Like lighting, huge. Didn't really think about that being important when I was younger. And I improved the audio quality a little bit more, just more practice, the editing quality a little bit more practice, more research. I definitely think early on it was a lot of practice and not enough research, but it's good to see that like right away. First thing you did was a bunch of people know, I don't. How can you help me? Please help me.
Yeah. I think for me, if you transfer that into everyday life, whether you want to be a hairdresser or a nurse or, a doctor or a footballer, you don't just go and do them things. You learn, you go and you study and you educate yourself. And the thing is, this is probably helpful for any, small YouTube channels that support you and watch your sort of and listen to your podcast, that people really need to manage their own expectations and just understand that it's not going to all happen straight away. And I'm actually doing a video on comparison, but I feel we compare ourselves to other people far too much. And for me, as we're children, for example, let's just use this analogy. I'm going to hate myself because I wanted to use this in a video. But for me, when we're children, we stop wearing nappies or diapers, as you would say, at certain ages. We say our first word at certain ages. We lose our first teeth or, start walking and crawling all at different ages. And I think we need to sort of look at that concept as adults in what we do in everyday life, because we put so much pressure on ourselves to, oh, I'm not, at 1,000 subscribers. I've not got, a wife yet. I'm 31. I've still not got children. And we need to stop comparing ourselves, because we didn't do it as we were younger. And there was no issues there, because what that tells us looking back is very simple, that things happen at different ages for different people. So I think if any small YouTubers are watching, just really understand that, and without sounding patronizing, yes, I hit it in 53 days, but there was a lot of legwork that went into that, competitor analysis. Again, this is all stuff you do when you're starting a business. So competitor analysis, find out what your competitors are doing. I found your channel intro. And I was like, wow, I'll be very honest. I thought this guy is going to have some good content. It was very early. I think you maybe only done 2 or 3 videos there. And I remember connecting with you, and I remember seeing your channel banner. And I thought, right, yeah, I need to get my channel banner sorted, because this guy looks good in front of the camera and his channel banner is aesthetically pleasing, profile picture. So it's about, for me, understanding and accepting that there's people out there better than you. But don't see it as a threat. See it as, okay, how can I learn from this person? And again, that's transferable for me in everyday life. For example, I reached out to you. Hey, how do you do the podcast? Because I don't know how to do it. I would like some support. And I think we're too scared to ask for help, but that is sort of preventing us from being where we want to be. It's sort of putting a block in the way. So for keeping it sort of sure in terms of how I became, successful in terms of such a short period of time, marketing, competitor analysis, learning, and just people say, for me as well, I've seen so many videos. I feel like I'm going on a ramble now, but I feel like this is crucial. So many people say, just record. For me, I'm the total opposite. Don't record, just learn. Just, people say, oh, just put on the camera.
That's fair.
For me, I'm like, well, yeah, I think, well, don't put on the camera. Here's what you should probably do. You don't, as a surgeon, you don't just get thrown into the, into the theater with a scalpel and be like, come on, crack on. That's not what happens. They learn, they educate, they're educated, and they go through exams and they learn everything and anything. And the same with hairdressers, you name it. They don't just go and be good straight away. It's learning progress. And I think we're just ultimately too harsh on ourselves. I felt for me it was quite overwhelming because so many people were saying, oh, how have you had 1,000 views in a week? My first video got me 500 subscribers and 1,000 views in a week. And for me, I didn't know any difference. So I was thinking, well, I honestly felt really patronizing when I was saying this, but I was like, well, it's just market your videos in the right places. And of course, what I've now learned is that, of course, just like life, what might be basic to me is not basic to you, and vice versa. For example, a podcast, let's just go back there. You may think, oh, well, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. It's basic to you because you've been doing it, whereas I've never really done it. So it was really overwhelming, the amount of people that reached out and was like, oh my God, how have you done 500 subs in a week? How have you got, 1,000 subscribers in 53 days? And I was there, Demetri, trying to help everyone because that's just in my nature now. And I was like, do this, do that, your channel banner. If you have got TubeBuddy, do you use TubeBuddy?
I do use TubeBuddy, yep, and vidIQ.
Mm-hmm. So on TubeBuddy, it says at the bottom when you're on a video, doesn't it, how many videos this person's got? It says how many videos it's got, and mine says 39. And that's because I've done so many channel reviews to try and help smaller YouTubers by saying, you're not hooking your audience, your thumbnails, on good, your channel banner, your channel bio. And I've done so many of them, saved them, made them private because I didn't want anyone else seeing that. It's just me trying to help somebody else. But of course, when they're listed in private, it doesn't add to your watch time. But yeah, I think for me, what I learned is I was just trying to help too many people, because I thought, well, it was easy for me in a non, sort of beat in my chest, show off way. It was easy for me because I put the legwork in beforehand, and that's that. I think, we expect the results without putting the legwork in, and that's where we're going wrong.
Yeah, I think that's definitely where a lot of people go wrong. You probably made a very good video at the start and you keyworded it correctly and the thumbnail was good and the click-through was good and you marketed it on your social media platforms of people and it just got you a bunch of subs. And that happens for actually more people than not, I think, or maybe not more people than not, but more than people think.
Yes.
I hit a couple hundred relatively quickly. It wasn't that hard. I got to around 100 in like the first week because I had done it before. I networked with like everyone I knew in my life and was like, hey, help me out for the first couple weeks because I'll need some like social proof, yada, yada. And
Same.
There's, it's funny. I just remember you told me this on the phone. Didn't you get accused of like buying subs?
Yeah. I put something on Facebook, on one of these Facebook groups, and I was like, I've had 500 subs in a week. This is my video. Can you guys give me any sort of feedback? And then I went away for whatever I was doing, and then I returned a few hours later to Facebook, and someone was like, "How did you do this? How did you get this?" And then someone underneath, several people were saying, "He must have bought subs. There's no way you can do that." And I think that is it's so bad to think that people just think the worst of you. For me, I put the legwork in, and I answered the 5 questions that people want to know in your channel trailer: what your videos are for, when you're going to release them, who your target audience is, what you're hoping to achieve, and what they can expect from the channel. They're the 5 questions when you click onto someone's channel you want to be answered. And I answered them in 3.5 minutes. So I feel that people instantaneously realized whether they want to subscribe or not subscribe, whether it's for them or not. So yeah, I got accused that plenty of times.
Nice. I don't think I've ever been told like I bought subs, but I will say the channel trailer thing is a very important thing. I had that up for a while. I think a channel trailer, when you start it and I'm like, hey, and you say, hey, this is me, this is my plan, people definitely get behind that. Now, for me, I made a video called the Foolproof Guide to Waking Up Early. And that did very well. A lot of people subbed to me based off of that video. I would say once you make like a key mark video that's like, okay, this is like what you are in most of your videos, this is the best of your content, then putting that as your trailer for new visiting subs, personally, I think that works well. And then, from that point on, I opened it up with a bang in that video. There's nice B-roll. There's like me waking up with an alarm, all that sort of things. And people
That
are
was
like,
the
was the first video you saw of mine?
no, that I seen the channel intro. I was just going to say that was the one where you go straight on the video and it goes me, and I was like, oh.
Yeah.
I recall, yeah, it was a good video.
Yeah, and that's the thing, I hit a very big hook there because people are like, either they go, because iPhone alarm, or they'll go, oh, what is this? And once you get enough videos in, I would recommend maybe switching the trailer. I mean, it matters for certain people. If you have an amazing trailer that somehow incorporates what your eventual style will be, it most likely won't be because you don't start the same way that you end up improving your content later. But, like, do a trailer because then people will have an idea and then people will be like, oh, yeah, sure. Or, nah. And doing nothing, not having no trailers, not a good idea. I know some people who are like doing really well on YouTube though, that I've had on podcasts before that don't have a trailer, that don't have a banner even, and that don't have playlists. And I'm like, dang, how is that happening? Like that's just like, I don't know, man. Like I don't have words to describe that. They make good videos, but it's just like, I feel like it's just odd, like a channel with like thousands of subs to not have any of those things.
Yeah. I think the crucial for when you are starting off, especially if you only got one video or maybe a handful of videos, people don't really know what to expect. So I always say a little pointer, and again, I'm going to kick myself because I wanted to use this in the video, but feel your channel banner should paint a picture of your channel and your About Me page should tell a story. So your channel banner for me paints a picture and your About Me page tell a story, and they should work in harmony. But the only advice I can give and you can give is what we already know and what's worked for us. So other people might be like you said, they have 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 subs, never really had a channel bio, never really had a banner, and they're sitting there kicking them back with their feet up going, yeah, I don't need to do that. But it's just what's worked for us, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. And it just could be, they could have also been making consistent content for a while. I mean, that's also part of the case. Consistent content is probably the most, like, all these things that you listed, important. But I think, number one, are you making content like consistently? Because you're making one a week. That's still consistent. It doesn't matter really. I think even every 2 weeks, maybe 2 weeks is like the max that you can like take a break from. But if people know that you're making a video every 2 weeks, if people know for me that I'm making the Sunday video, the Wednesday video, the Friday video at the time, and then now switching it to the live streams, whatnot. And they just know, like, I'm going to be making content all the time. The algorithm knows I'm going to be making content all the time. And then eventually it's just a matter of figuring out other little tweaks like YouTube SEO and whatnot. I think, what term works for my channel, and I just probably need to not, I don't want to say take advantage of it, but seize the opportunity. I'm becoming a minimalist. I've been talking about this for a little while. Anytime I put the word minimalist in my channel or in my titles of videos, it does better. And I'm just like,
oh, really?
Yeah, I'm like, I need to take advantage of that keyword because I am going to become a minimalist. I know for a fact if I make just an absolute banger, just something that is a really good video and has a great thumbnail, it'll pop off. And that happens to so many people, different people who get into minimalism and then become a YouTuber. And I'm just like, oh, man, I feel like I need to do that. But then I feel like I'm falling into the Matt Diavella copycat trope, which I keep joking about on the channel, but I actually kind of get fearful sometimes, like I do like the high quality ish video with the B-roll. I got the podcast because he did this forever while he was making videos. And I'm just like, am I like a wannabe Matt Diavella? Yeah, like it's in the back of my head the whole time. I'm like, he is, because he is my favorite YouTuber, and maybe it's just like the influence is just like being poured down on me all the time, and I'm like, yeah, I only need one shirt. I only need like 10 pairs of the same shirt, and then I'm realizing like Matt eventually, I had made a video about that a long time ago, and I was like, oh, man, I don't know. You get fearful of those type of things because he did his podcast, The Ground Up Show, once a week, all the time for like a couple hundred episodes before he started like being consistent with YouTube videos as well. And I'm just like, I see some similarities.
It's a law of attraction, isn't it? I guess.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay.
For me, I think the one person that I've followed for years is Shetty. and a lot of his content. For example, I mean, I get really, really, really inspired by his, podcasts and his videos and things like that. Absolutely. But what I will say is that when I perhaps say something to, for example, let me put this into an example. I said something to a friend of mine that I feel that ultimately we all just want to be loved. Now, let's not get really deep into this, but I said, this is my opinion and here's why. And then a month later, I watched a podcast. I watched the podcast with Jay and Tom. Help me out here. Tom, but begins with B. Tom Bailu, how do you pronounce his name?
I don't actually know who that is.
Anyway, no problem. So I watched the video. He does impact theory. Anyway, and he was on that. He was on that video of the podcast, and he said the same thing. And for me, I got really psyched. I was like, oh my God, look, Jay, do we think the same? So I get what you're saying, and I think it's the sort of content and the information you consume obviously changes us. And you're consuming a lot of Matt's content, and I've seen it myself, especially with the thumbnails. I think your thumbnails are really smart. You start putting text on them now, but there's nothing wrong with that. I guess you're completely. I think the great thing about YouTube for me is you can be 100% yourself, and no one can take that away from you. Of course, we're going to be inspired, and we're going to change the way we think by certain things that we view and we consume. But I guess it's not really a bad place to go, is it? Following in Matt's footsteps. If we're talking 3 years' time and you're where Matt is now, I guess it's not a bad thing to be following. There's worse things
I wouldn't
to be.
Complain. You got like 2 million-ish subs. You got like 1,000+ people on Patreon making your life. You're making a living off of just asking anything podcasts and behind the scenes footage. Yeah, I wouldn't really mind that.
I got to ask you a question though, Demetri, about that. Would you rather have his biceps or his fortune and fame?
I mean, nobody said I had bicep. I'm just kidding. I wouldn't. No, I definitely. I like that. That's a good one. I'll refrain from answering because it is a difficult question to answer. I think anyone who says they don't want Matt's biceps is crazy. Anyone who says they don't want Matt's fortune and fame, also crazy. So
absolutely.
You know what's funny? You mentioned the thing about the Jay Shetty and you having the exact same thought in what you mentioned. I started using time blocking the exact same week Matt did last fall.
Wow.
Like he dropped a video and said he'd been doing it for a month. And I was like, I could go on my calendar. I'm like,
me too. Looking for Matt.
I was like, what? This is before I started YouTube and everything, but I was like, what the?
Yeah.
What is this? What is going on? And I just like, I don't know. That was very big for me. I was like, oh, look at that. Me and Matt started using calendar at the same, a block schedule calendar at the same time. And what a time. What a time. I'm trying to get this guy on my podcast. That'd be funny if I ever, and if
that would be good.
That is going to be the largest goal I'll ever have, probably. Getting Matt Diavella on my podcast. Because I know that guy just, I don't want to say he says no to everybody, but he's busy and he does not usually go on other people's shows since the past year. He just is, he just doesn't go on other people's stuff. And I think he just keeps, he learned how to say no to people, which is not a bad thing. And yeah, I definitely, if I ever got that to happen, I'd be pretty happy. But you know what? We talked about Jay Shetty. And I think this is a good segue into something that we were going to talk about. There's this negative, or we have two things. We can talk about a lot of different things on this podcast, but I think you wanting to be a life coach would be a good segue from the Jay Shetty concept. You want to be a life coach. I'd say Jay Shetty is you know what? His life, or at least the way that he may have started his life and then turned it around, because obviously you're aware that, he didn't exactly start off as the person he is now. And I think you turning around from the negative situation you had, and then you wanted to become a life coach, there's some parallels there, which is actually interesting. Maybe is that one of the reasons why you're very into Jay Shetty?
No, I guess I'll be very black and white. I just love his perception and his, thought process. And for me, I'm obsessed with the mind. And how people put, I mean, we've seen David Blaine recently putting his body on the line, which is pretty awesome. But of course, we have people putting their bodies through intense pressure. And I think what inspires me about Jay is that he puts his mind under intense pressure, training as a monk. And for me, it fascinates me that it's just like we said before about the content we consume, creates the outlook we have on life. And I think Jay's sort of perception and the way he goes about his life, and of course, it's only what we see. It's only what we see. It could all be a farce. Let's be very transparent. It could.
You're right. You're completely right, by the way.
He could not be like that at all. But the way the Jay Shetty that I see, and the Jay Shetty that I watch and love his content. I love the guests he has on there, and I just think it's a really different way to look at life, because regardless of how long we're on this planet, the only thing we leave back behind is a legacy. That is it. We leave a legacy behind, and people are going to remember us for one way or another. And I think people are going to remember him for touching so many lives and changing so many people in a positive way. And I guess that's sort of what I want as well.
Yeah, and that's really important, and that's a big part of, I know, what you want to be. We were talking about earlier with like your job and how it's not your ideal sort of situation. You, in the long term, from what I got in our conversations before, is that you want to be a life coach. And I think Jay is probably someone good to look at, someone good to look at as an example. I think the way life coaches may be now is definitely different than it has been in the past. I think content creation is a big part of maybe being a life coach now, so that you can sort of have that social proof, if anything. Maybe you can eventually stray away from it if you don't want to keep making content, but you definitely want to be a life coach in the long run. Am I correct?
Yeah, for me, I have always found myself being the person that people go to for advice, whether that's with money, whether that's with decisions, relationships, mental health more recently. And I enjoy helping and assisting, whether it's family, friends, even now, people on Instagram are reaching out to me. I had a girl who has an Instagram account who she's kept their face off the Instagram account, and she reached out to me literally 2 days ago and said, Shaun, I'd like your advice. I want to put my face on Instagram, and this is why. What do you think the pros are? What do you think the cons are? Do you think I should do it? Now, this is a person who's just been watching my channel and has decided that from what she sees and how I perceive myself, again, on my channel and my pages, that I'm an approachable person and she values my advice. So I gave her some advice, and again, just what I thought, just my opinion, gave her the pros, gave her the cons, gave her, my opinion on the whole idea. And she came back and, revealed the face on Instagram. And the reason for that is because she's female and she wears a headscarf, and she was a bit sort of apprehensive because she didn't want to be discriminated and whatnot. And, all the other things that go with being a female in this modern world today. But I was overwhelmed and humbled that she decided to approach me and ask me for my opinion. So yeah, I seem to attract this. Maybe it's again law of attraction, but I seem to be attracting these people who are asking me for advice. So I thought, I enjoy it. I don't really see it as work. So why not make it work? Why not, enjoy it and get paid to do it? What's wrong with that?
Yeah, that's fair. I think that's a very touching story. I don't know if I've had anything like that. Like, should I, show my face on Instagram? I've had some questions regarding a lot of productivity things, a couple self-development things, a couple like mindset things, which is always nice, like when I think eventually maybe it'll become too much, but even in the comment section, I get a lot of questions about productivity stuff, and that's a lot-ish. I think it's good that we're doing this, and then it's good that you want to do that, because that's a field where you can really make some direct impact on some people's lives. We talk about like creating value in jobs, and that's sort of the way people make money. And I'd say the value that you're creating for people in a life coach situation is definitely better than what you're doing in like the sales world. And that's coming from someone who has a marketing degree. So I'm just saying, I definitely think that it's a very cool thing that you want to do. I think that it's something that I would maybe consider as well, maybe to a lesser direct one-on-one coaching extent, but sort of a content version of that, if that makes any sense. because
Yeah.
people like Matt definitely like literally just my mindset after I started watching Matt's videos and was introduced to all the different people, like you mentioned, Shetty. I had obviously watched him. After you get introduced to that sort of content, you have such a mindset shift and you have such an improvement in your life.
Absolutely.
And them making a living off of it, to some on the outside who aren't listening to the content, aren't watching the content, maybe like, it's so dumb. People are making money on YouTube. What are they even doing? I might agree with you if it's some people who are making like prank videos, but for those specific people, they're making direct impact on people's lives. People go from being downtrodden and sad about different things, and then they're introduced to different mindset shifts and they're in a better place in their life. So I definitely think that's awesome that you're doing that. The next thing I wanted to talk about, speaking of, people being down and in different places, mental health's really important. And that's like one of your main things you go back to on your channel a lot. Mine's like productivity guy. I'd say you definitely talk about mental health a lot and its importance. And we talked about on the phone, we talked about how it's becoming so much of an important topic to people, like professional sports players are bringing it up, which is beforehand would have maybe been taboo, the concept of going to therapy more. What are your thoughts on mental health in general? And then just a second question would be your thoughts on going to therapy and getting help.
Okay. Yeah. I think ultimately, as you said, the sort of just unpacking a bit more what you've said, I think recently the stigma has been sort of lessened, less of a taboo subject. However, there's no disputing that it is still there. And for me, I think that especially us men, we sort of try and pack things up and not really discuss it. But the reality of it is we shouldn't be like that. And I think the world will be so much in such a better place if we all just spoke. The first video I did, which was the awful one, was just about I'd seen, and again, I just need to. Have you seen Afterlife on Netflix? Ricky Gervais.
Is that a stand-up of his?
No, it's a series. You might not have seen it. It's not a problem if you have, but just to give you a concept. So the spoiler alert for anyone listening, but but there's Ricky Gervais and he's playing this character who loses his wife, and he's there on his own with his thoughts all the time, contemplating suicide. He doesn't talk about how he's feeling. He's just miserable with the world, miserable with everything. He doesn't discuss it, and he goes home and he drinks and he contemplates with taking his own life. And that was what prompted me to start a video, because I was thinking right now, during, let's call it the beer thing, where everyone's stuck at home, no one is, people are just with their own thoughts. And sometimes that can be the worst place to be, at home, alone with your own thoughts, in the sort of midst of the busy days, the busy lives that we have. A lot of the time they're there, but because we're so occupied with whether it's work, whether it's children, whether it's, the gym, whatever it is, it's less of a problem. So I felt during the beer thing, while we were all on lockdown, that it was very much going to be, a mental health crisis, and people need to reach out and just speak to people. And for me, I went through, whilst I was at that really big company that I discussed, I was going through a really volatile relationship, and my mental health was not in a great place, and people would look at me and think, oh, well, why, you've got a brilliant job, you have a nice car, you earn a lot of money. Why, what have you got to be sad about? But that right there is the problem. That right there is the problem, because people's perceptions, things aren't always as they seem. And for me, I can't stress that enough. We don't know sort of what people have been through. And I always think you should never sort of judge someone's decisions without knowing their options. And I think that's really stuck with me. And I almost want to just shake the universe as a whole and be like, just talk, because it's okay to feel down or feel in the dumps or wake up some days. I'm sure, you get it, and you don't want to record, you don't want to, do certain things that you've committed to. And I feel we're too harsh on ourselves, and that just worsens the problem, rather than just be a bit more compassionate for ourselves and be like, yeah, feel a bit down today. That's okay. This is life. This happens. Sometimes your body gets tired from running, the gym, I play football, and we're not hard on ourselves when we're absolutely exhausted physically and we just want to lay there and watch Netflix or, just relax. So why are we so harsh on us when our mind wants a break, when our mind needs a rest? We sort of punish ourselves, and it's a very relentless and, again, vicious cycle. So mental health as a whole, I'm really trying to do my part, to use my platform and my voice to let people know that whether it doesn't matter how old you are, where you come from, your race, religion, whatever, you're going to have down days. That's the reality of life, and it's okay to talk about it. So therapy wise, to answer your second question, in the UK, it is frowned upon, and it's sort of very much like, oh, you go to therapy. Oh, what's wrong with you? Which is completely wrong. Yeah, and that is exactly why we're sort of taking one step forward, talking about mental health, but then not going to therapy to improve our mental health, and because we're too concerned about what others think. And again, it's going back to the whole comparison thing. So therapy, I mentioned again in one of my videos that we have a gym for our bodies, and one day I hope we have a gym for our minds, because for me, that is what I envision. That is the long-term goal, where I want to help in the mental health sort of setting. And I think I could do that with being a life coach. And I think I can do that by delivering not motivational, but realistic content that is going to help people in times of need. So yeah, the therapy, you guys in the States, maybe you can tell me a bit more about it, but it's a bit more common, I think, in the UK it isn't. Am I right?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it is a little more common in the US now, but the negative stigma is definitely still there. I think it took a lot for the negative stigma to be taken away, or at least to be leveled off a bit. So, for example, there's a player in the NFL, or not the NFL, the NBA. He's a multiple-time All-Star. His name's Kevin Love. And he had a panic attack and had to stop playing, like mid-game. And
right, okay. Wow.
Yeah, and he was, like scrutinized at the fact that he didn't play the second half because he didn't have like there was no physical reason, right?
That's it. That's the problem. Right. Physical reason.
Yeah, no, there was no physical reason. And then he was like, yeah, but like I had a panic attack though. And he opened up about it, and him and then another really big NBA star, DeMar DeRozan, brought up it, and I think that was like a big tipping point for people's perception, because I don't know if you've ever had a panic attack, but having them are not fun, and people get frozen, they feel like they can't move, and it's just like, well, it's in your head. That's just like such a narrow mindset of understanding how your brain affects your physical body, because like you're not feeling good mentally or physically, the other one affects the other. So like, I've gotten hurt plenty of times when I've ran. My physical health has affected my mental health, which then in turn then makes me not want to do things as much. So, and then vice versa. So when Kevin Love is having that sort of thing happen to him, and then people are initially reacting in such a vicious way of like, you didn't have a reason to stop playing, dude. It's like, well, he kind of did. If you actually look into how panic attacks work, because there are people who are straight up immobilized when they have panic attacks. Have you ever had one?
I've not had a panic attack. However, I was when I was in school, there was a girl who used to have panic attacks, and obviously we're looking between 2003 and 2008. I had the exact same mentality and the narrow mindedness of, what do you mean you've got panic attacks? It's all in your head. And of course, I'm no shame in saying that, because that I've learned that is not the case. And that's why I'm now advocating for, for people to be more sort of open and loud about it. But no, I've not had a panic attack. I've flirted with depression enough to know that it's a very dark rabbit hole. But for me, I'm very lucky in the sense that I know when I'm going down a dark rabbit hole, I know sort of the things I need to do to get myself out of that really quickly. But unfortunately, people don't. So that's why we need to, normalize talking about it. I want people to be able to talk about going to therapy or going to coaching or whatever, just like you would about the football or, baseball in the States or basketball. I want to be able to say, one day, for example, in the UK, we always say, oh, do you want to go out for a pint? And I would like, and I mentioned this to you on the phone, I would like for people to be able to go, I've got my therapy session at 3, I'm free, I'm going to be free for around 4, and people to go, okay, cool, see you after therapy. And it just be so normal, like going to the gym.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, I think to be honest, I think we're a fair long way away from it. Maybe by the end of your generation and by the end of mine, we're only like 6 years apart, so it's not that big. But like by the time that we're hopefully towards the end of our lives, I hope that it does make that shift. You know what? Actually, because we've been talking about open up about stuff, I haven't brought it up on the channel yet, but I came to the realization about like 2 years ago that when I was younger, I used to have panic attacks. I didn't know that I was having panic attacks until afterwards. I had this weird, basically it was textbook from the way you describe it, or the way that people describe panic attacks. They start overthinking something and then they get immobilized, they have chest pains, they feel like they can't move. And my mom had seen it happen multiple times and didn't know what it was. There was multiple times where I would be in bed at night, I'd be really stressed about something. And I mean, to be honest, like if I've told this to some people and their immediate response was like, what were you stressed about when you were like 8 or 12? And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, okay, so I'm going to like try to skate out of this conversation because this is not exactly a good response. And you're missing the entire point. But anyways, like mental health is something that I didn't even realize was a problem for me when I was younger. I don't know what was making me anxious. I think it was just like my ability to handle stressful situations. Maybe just I was born with some things that, or I even had something early in my life that had affected it. You know what I'm saying? Like there are some things that could have impacted me that I'm unaware of. And up until like high school, like I would have these situations where I'd be on the couch just thinking about things, and then like the next thing I know, my chest gets tight, and then I think about the fact that my chest is tight, and then like an example, I can remember multiple examples of being in my bed in my room trying to scream to get my parents, but I was so immobilized. They were downstairs still like awake watching TV, and I couldn't speak loud enough. I couldn't get up. Like, and I didn't know that was a thing. And then like looking back on it, originally I just thought that was like chest tightness or some weird, like, I was like, do I have heart problems or something? You know what I'm saying? Like when I was younger, I didn't know what the heck it was.
Of course.
And then I get older and I look back on that and I get into self-development again. And I was like, I used to have panic attacks. Yeah. I didn't know that because because like the Kevin Love thing got brought up. And then I was thinking about it, I was like, yeah, I mean, well, why would he be immobile oh my God, you used to have panic attacks.
The penny dropped.
I was like, wait a second. I forgot about that. I forgot that I used to just be on the couch or on my bed and thinking about something, and then the next thing I knew, I couldn't move. And I thought, like, that was odd. I didn't really understand why. And, man, I will say one thing, like the chest pain that you experience during those, if you have a bad panic attack, you genuinely can barely speak. It's very immobilizing.
That was sort of, as I seen it, and this girl, bless her, used to have them quite often. And yeah, I used to think, I think this is the thing. We're not educated on it either, as children, because, it's only now, the last 10 years coming to light that mental health is a thing. And we're not educated as children, our parents don't know how to deal with it because they haven't had the education. They've not had the tools or the equipment to equip themselves correctly to manage it, navigate through it. So I can see exactly why it's sort of less in the older generations, less a thing. You probably still get, not to stereotype people, the older generation, but it's probably more often that they say, mental health or panic attacks or, things like that, where it's sort of frowned upon. Whereas our generation, I'm going to say ours because I'm only 6 years apart, don't make me feel old, that I think it's a bit more normal, and it's getting normalized. But like you said, we're a million miles away. And are you still having panic attacks now? Or?
No, I don't know what happened, but literally like I reached the age of like 15 and then it just stopped. And maybe I just learned to manage stress better as I got older. maybe I was masking it. I'm not really sure. I think there may have been like a minor episode or two within the past like 6-7 years, but nothing as bad as that. Like, and just to clarify, like my mom was very concerned, but she just didn't know. Like, I don't know what you're supposed to do in that situation, right? Like, cause I was done with it in a matter of like 30 minutes. So or 40 minutes, and she's not gonna like, what are you gonna call an ambulance? Like, what are you gonna do? Like, call an ambulance because like someone's immobilized and then, but like it always goes away. Like, am I going to get it checked for a heart condition? Because that doesn't really make sense. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like she was just in a spot where she didn't know what to do. Or anyone in the house didn't know what to do. Because I think most people in my house had saw it happen. And it's just weird that it's not discussed as a thing. And I think definitely it should be more. And this goes back to, I feel like I harp on the education system a lot in my podcast. But, you know, like, we don't get taught personal finance. We don't get taught mental health. We get taught things that always people are like, I don't end up using it. And then they're like, well, you had to learn it just in case you wanted to become an engineer or something. And I'm just like, man, you could have fit it in somehow. Like,
I'm with you.
From everything I've learned regarding like time management, et cetera, et cetera. Oh man, okay, here's an example. We require gym or like athletic activity as a class in my state of Illinois. You taught mental health during that time period, guarantee you, most of those people would end up working out because of what they learned about mental health. Guarantee you, they would work out on their own accord. But that's just too easy. That just makes too much sense. Man.
Yeah, I like that. I like that sort of viewpoint on it because I guess, you know, I'm the type of person that, you know, I change my mind when presented with new information. And I really like that look because had we have taught, you know, finance, just touching on finance before, and mental health, you know, would we now be in such a global crisis? Would people, you know, poverty still be rife? You know, there's so many, you know, ways and stems and branches. If we were taught X, Y, and Z, would we be here now? Chances are no. I very, very highly doubt it. But yeah, I like that viewpoint on it. It's very, it's a different way to look at it. And the benefits of you mentioned before about how, I mean, we both mentioned how we're a million miles away, but what I would like to think now, perhaps in the UK, certainly, that, I don't know about the States, but in the UK, that if you were experiencing a panic attack, there are now helplines you can call to advise you for what to do. You know, whereas instead of, like you said, ringing an ambulance, there's, you know, things, charities, organizations that you can call and say, this is what I'm experiencing. What do you advise we do? And there'll be people there who, you know, whether they're psychologists or, you know, they've been taught CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, and things like that to help you. And a lot of the time it's simple things, but of course, everything's simple when you know it. For example, breath work. Breath work blows my mind. I mean, I could do a whole podcast on breath work because it's unbelievable of how, like you said before, your mind and your body are sort of are linked, and your body can have an impact on your mind, but breath work can sort of align them together. But yeah, I think now, I don't know, I'll be interested to see in the States, but now you can certainly ring up if you're experiencing mental health attack or depression, and you could be advised on what to do.
That's awesome. I didn't know that they have those now. I figured, you know, they would probably improve their the capabilities to help with those things. I think you bringing up breathwork is pretty interesting. I know Matt D'Avella did a 30-day challenge on breathwork before. He mentioned all the positives of it. It is a very interesting concept. I'd never really heard of breathwork until he brought it up. Very cool video in general. If anyone wants to go check that out, I tried breathwork for 30 days by Matt D'Avella on YouTube, and you know, I wish back in the day they had those helplines, but, you know, obviously they do now, and I'm happy for people who are experiencing them now. I do want to get into a little bit more about one or two more points before we wrap things up. It's been a quick hour and 20 minutes so far. Do you have a clock by you? Yeah, see, I love doing this. I always do this to people. If the conversation's flowing well, I'll just casually bring it up towards the end. You'll be like, I've been talking for that long. Yeah, no, right? It's been pretty good.
I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's been fun. We did talk about some books beforehand, which I thought was interesting. And, you know, I'm a big runner. I love running. I love Nike as a company. I think they make pretty decent shoes. And let's talk about Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, the founder of Nike, one of the co-founders of Nike. You read that book. What are your favorite parts about it? What do you learn from it? Because I'm just kind of curious what your insights are from that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I absolutely am in a position now in my life where as I said, 28, I want to be self-employed, working for myself by 30. So I think anyone listening, watching, who wants to, get into their own sort of business entrepreneurship, however you want to put it, this book is so insightful. Now, talking about it now, I'm getting excited because it's so real. What I like about it, Phil, I don't know if he's wrote it as a memoir, because obviously, he's going back to when it first started and everything like that. But what I like about it is there's no fluff. It's just so real. It talks about the struggles of, how, he's in trouble with the FBI, how he nearly goes to jail, how he, fails, how he's sort of robbing Peter to pay Paul, and he's very open, honest, and vulnerable, and the things he's done, and it just gives you I think it's a wake-up call to anyone who wants to work for themselves. It ain't going to be easy. People are going to tell you you're going to fail. People are going to say, you're crazy, you shouldn't be doing X, Y, and Z. But the reality of it is if you stick with what your passion is, and you're not afraid of falling down 5 times, as long as you get up 6, then you will become successful in whatever you want to do. Now, that doesn't mean that every single opportunity or, idea you have is going to come to light. But I don't know if you know much about him, but he was a runner himself.
Yeah, he ran at Oregon for Bill Bowerman in the 70s. Yeah,
yes.
I know my running history. I'm a running nerd. I love that story. Anyways, sorry, continue.
No problem. So yeah, I mean, Bill Bowerman, he's crazy, man. He is crazy. So, the short of it is he was obsessed with sport and he wanted to get into something that was sport related. And he had this crazy idea of obviously creating shoes. And for me, it was very well written in the sense that, how he remembers these things is beyond me. It blows my mind. But it was very much, he needed to lend £50, I think $50, sorry, from his father to get things up and running. And, look where we are now. But the sort of timeline, what I like about it is the way it's written is he has it year by year. And how I think the sort of lessons that I've learned is you need to have, I think Steve Jobs did it. I think was it Richard Branson? One of the two. Talk about hiring people who are better than you in their field. We don't hire people to tell them what to do. We hire people to tell that so they can tell us what to do.
I doubt it was Steve Jobs. Sorry to cut you up, but I doubt it was the way Steve Jobs acted. I doubt it was Steve Jobs. It was probably
It must have been Richard Branson then. But it was one of them anyway. And that is very much how Phil was. He was very much like, I don't have a clue with this, let's hire someone who does. And I think when even you can relate it to YouTube and in life, you're not going to know things straight away. And I was listening to a podcast about high performers and how high performers, they go and get the answer rather than, just be like, for example, let's just break it really, really quick. I'm digressing, but I want to tell you the story. So for example, if you're going to someone's house or you're in the grocery store or something like that, and you don't know where something is, or you don't know where a location is, it's said that high performers will ask, and it seems so basic, but they'll ask a member of the public and say, hey, do you know where this street is? Or a high performer will say to one of the people in the store, do you know where the cans of tomato sauce or cans of chopped tomatoes are? And non-high performers will not do that. So they won't have that sort of mind switch of saying, I know what I need. I need chopped tomatoes. Someone else knows where they are. So let's just ask them and I'll get to the answer quicker. So it's very simple. But for me, Phil told a very real story, authentic. And my life lesson was that you need to have a good support network around you. You are not going to know everything straight away. And it's easier to hire people who do than, try and learn it yourself. Of course, that works on both sides of the coin. And things aren't easy. My nan used to say, and she still says to me, work hard. And that is one thing that Phil sort of stands by. Things aren't handed to people on silver platter. You got to work your ass off for it. And if you're prepared to put the legwork in, I'm pretty sure you'll get the results that you want.
Yeah, I think Phil's story is so crazy because, we think of Nike as this huge conglomerate, this huge company, this huge all-encompassing sports athletic wear company now. But I mean, they were just making track shoes in the start, and they failed pretty hard. They had Steve Prefontaine, who was one of their first big people wearing their shoes, and like the 80s jogging or late 70s jogging boom or whatever, and then the unfortunate passing of Steve Prefontaine kind of slowed down Nike's success, and they ended up getting through a lot of different things that most companies would have failed through. So I definitely need to read that book because there are so many different parallels you can draw to you mentioned businesses, but as well as YouTube. I have mentioned I made a video about why you need to overcome your fear of failures. It's because all these successful people have failed. I fail all the time. I have failed so many times on YouTube. And this time around, I was like, I'm just not going to fear the failure. I'm going to put in the work, see what happens. When you keep doing that enough, most of the time you're going to be successful. If you aren't successful this time, like you said, getting up the 6th time after you fail 5 times is all you really need. And people don't realize that. So definitely think that's a book that people need to check out.
All you can do.
Yeah. That's all you can do. Mm-hmm. That's all you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I don't want to give too much of the book away because there's some stories, and I could sit here and talk to you about it for hours. But for anyone who's wanting to get into entrepreneurship and who has any sort of interest in whether it's track or how the real story of business, I would certainly suggest it and recommend it to anybody.
Yeah, it's awesome. I think the last thing I want to ask you is we're gonna talk about my favorite topic on the planet. It's the beer thing. The topic that has been consuming the entire world. That was a sarcastic comment about it being my favorite topic. The topic that has consumed the entire world. I want to talk to you a little bit about how it's affected your life in a negative way first, but then you got to positive that thing, because if you don't, then we just ended on a negative note. And then what's the point of the podcast?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So negatively, I would say the beer thing, as we like to call it. I grew up as a very sort of non-family person, but my partner now is polar opposite, very close with her family. And I think it had more of an impact on the people around me than myself directly. I'm very... I can adapt to change very easily. Going back to my childhood, moved around a lot of times, different schools, things like that. And I've always had to adapt. That's just been my life. And I'm not trying to make people feel sorry, but the reality of it is I've just had to adapt at times. And I feel that that's a good, strong attribute of mine. Whereas people around me were directly affected in a more negative way. And that was when I sort of realized that I can try and make people feel slightly better by showing them that it is all doom and gloom right now, because that's what the media is showing us. And of course, nonetheless, tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people, have sadly passed on and things. However, we can use this time, that we have with our families, because fingers crossed this doesn't happen again in our lifetime. But we have to see the positive in the negative, and that is me in a nutshell, because you've got all this time on your hands that you can do what you want with. I decided to start a YouTube channel, got into reading books, really picked up the self-development, self-help sort of side of things. Spent so much time with my immediate family, which I absolutely love. And I always say, and it's so common, but time's the one commodity you cannot buy more of. And when you're given an abundance of it, sometimes we're overwhelmed and we don't really know what to do with it. So I've absolutely loved getting creative, reading, listening to podcasts, doing anything that's going to make me feel better, both mentally and physically. One thing I will share with you, which is really, it's so minor, but I always feel great afterwards. I enjoy, so for people who are listening or watching, I live with my partner, so I don't live at home or anything. So we've got our place together, and she's a nurse within the healthcare system. So she's there doing 12 and a half, 13-hour days, 3-4 days a week. And I'm in the house on my own with the dog. Now dogs, by the way, there's two. So I enjoyed really maintaining the household and cleaning up. And I know people may think, oh, well, you've got to clean up, but it really made me feel good inside. And I felt better mentally once I'd cleaned up. So I really established really early on what things I was enjoying doing: reading, creating videos, researching videos, got back into cooking, maintaining the house. So when she come home from, working 13 hours as a nurse, she's coming home to a nice cooked meal. The house is clean, little things like that, the small things in life. I think you did a video on how to appreciate the small things, and I'm a big advocate for that as well. So positively, yeah, it's been amazing to have all this time, and we're very lucky that I'm furloughed in the sense that I'm still getting paid, and it's not having too much of an impact on our mortgage or anything like that. And it's been a great opportunity to start YouTube. If this beer thing hadn't have happened, would I have started YouTube? No chance. So there's certainly positives to come out of it, and obviously I'm not glad it happened, but I'm glad I, got creative, and I've really sort of looked inward and found out what I enjoy doing, what works for me, and just started this whole journey, which I think is only going to lead to good things happening. And as I said before, you only have, a certain amount of time on the world, so it'll be good whilst we're here to make it a better place for when we're gone.
Yeah, I definitely think that's so true. I think the main point that you brought up that I think echoes in the thoughts of many people who have taken advantage of the situation in a positive way for their personal lives is, I'm not glad this happened, but I'm glad I'm making the most of it, because there's definitely like so many negative things you could say about it. And that's why I always want to bring the positive of it, because if you're here watching this podcast and you have your health and you have family members' health, I think all you can do is try to make the most of it in the least negative way possible. I think, the news, they give you information. Now, what you do with that information is up to you. And I think for you, Shaun, and for me, I think we both understand that, focusing on what we can control is important, and focusing on what we can't control isn't going to be good for our mental health. And I think this was a good conversation to have as the beer thing is heading into that next stage of like, some countries are claiming they have vaccines almost ready. A lot of people are thinking it's kind of taken too long to finish this whole thing out. And I think this was good to have. I really had a good talk, man.
Absolutely, yeah. Enjoyed it. Did not realize how fast it went. I mean, you're telling me it was an hour and a half or around 20 minutes ago. I was like, what? Really? But no, it's been great. Love to do it again. And hopefully our insights and the conversation, if it helps one person, then it's time well spent. So thank you for having me.
What he said. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching the show. And with that being said, I will see you guys in the next one.